after the wars here in Texas, they didn't have much money to give people for compensation, so they gave them land grants. So after it was ranch land, this became part of an RV park. You can still see some evidence of that in the form of, I'm going to call them crusty rectangles where an RV used to be parked. So you'll notice there are some spread out through here, more so up top through the prairie restoration area that you just drove past on the way down. And our office buildings are actually where they used to do laundry and a hangout spot, so they kept that here for us.
Oh, wow.
Was giving the RV campground vibe.
Cool. Yeah, so this park was established back in 2010 thanks to a landowner who lives on the neighboring property. He walked down to the spring and realized this was part of his backyard and it is worth protecting. Otherwise, this would be in the hands of developers. They already started clearing trees up top for hotels and condos. And as fun as that may sound, living next to a luxurious spring area, that's not good for the environment. Again, we stand above the aquifer, so we don't want we want very minimal cement here. So we work with as a conservation easement, so we actually have to keep the amount of cement down to a certain percentage or we lose that. You don't want that. We want as much water getting into the ground as you can. So something about 100 dump trucks worth of cement were taken out of here to help preserve the land and bring back native plants. You may still see some evidence of those RV spots. There are some wires and whatnot. We don't really want to remove that because that holds in the soil. It takes about 100 to 500 years just to get 2 inches of topsoil. And we don't really have a whole lot around here. It's not the best for agricultural land. So again, that's why this used to be part of grazing land instead. So we are going to walk down the Dry Creek Trail. If you would like to take a photo of this map to get an idea, if you want to explore after. Right now we are right here next to the pavilion. If you need to use a restroom, it's on the other side of that building. I'd like to do that before you head down, but we will be walking along this yellow dotted trail, the Dry Creek Trail, going down to the well, and then an option to join me up at the birding station. I'd like to check that out afterwards. So along our walk today in the Dry Creek, I like to call it the walk back in time because there are fossils down there, such as these. And I've been told to stop bringing them back to the nature center because we have so many. So this whole area used to be underwater. We were actually in part of the ancient seaway. So millions of years ago, between 65 and 115 million years ago, this place was all underwater. So there's nothing but these guys hanging around.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. We still have evidence of that here. And back to the aquifer and protecting this land. So we're essentially standing on a bunch of rock sponge is what I call it. This is what it kind of looks like, but that's all limestone. So this whole area is covered in karst features. So another reason, those are spaces in the ground where water is able to trickle down and recharge the aquifer. So obviously you don't want to put development over something like that, or you're gonna cap off your aquifer. You're not gonna be able to recharge it. We're not gonna have the spring. Local, municipal, like schools, people's houses, and stores have some wells tapped into this aquifer. So again, it's really important to protect this area around here because that is people's drinking supply too. If you want to take a peek at these fossils here, and we're going to get going down this trail on the other side of the building here. And our first stop will be right at the top of this staircase. I have a couple plants I would like to point out to you. I'm a huge plant person. I went to school for geography, resource, and environmental studies and minored in horticulture. Love gardening, love native plants, love ethnobotany. It's my day.
Get in front of me since
Okay.
we're recording. It's a stair.
So there are 2 plants over here. I'm going to stop at this one first. I don't know if y'all have seen this one anywhere before. It is a friendly plant to touch. It's super soft. This is called greater mullen. Some people will consider it an invasive in that it can spread, but it's not really economic. It doesn't really damage things economically. It's not harming any animals or people. But this plant right here will grow a tall flower stalk. It does not grow until its second year. This is a very so I like to pick the leaves and dry them, use them in a tea. It's a mucilage, so it'll help release mucus and it helps heal your lungs.
Wow.
You can smoke it too, which sounds strange. If you're looking to heal your lungs, why would you smoke it? But it still works. So some people will add this to a natural herbal blend. The flower stalk used to be used as a torch. So you can dip that into animal fat or oil and light it on fire, and it works as a torch. It burns for a long time. It's pretty cool. Peak pandemic, some folks were calling this the toilet paper toilet paper plant. It is soft, it does feel nice, you rub it on your face, but really soft plants still do have teeny tiny hooks on them. That sounds a little scary. So if you have bad allergies or irritated sensitive skin, obviously you don't want to put that anywhere near anything. So if you hear someone talk about a toilet paper plant, probably talking about mullen.
Oh, wow.
It is a little bitter, I will mention that. So anytime I have put it in tea, I know it's in there. It's healthy.
That's so fascinating.
This is not in bloom anymore. That's okay. There's more in the park that are. I like this one. This one tends to bloom first in our park almost every spring. This is Agarita. It has really yellow, bright, bold blooms, and it smells like sweet honey. So if you're walking around the park and you start to smell something very sweet, it's probably got one of these nearby. Pokey leaves, don't go too close to it. Too close to it, it will hurt. It does slightly bruise you depending on how hard it pokes you. Good deer resistant plant, native plant, drought tolerant, always gonna be around. The berries, some people call it the wild currant, so you can make jellies out of the berries. The stems inside are it's okay, he needs some pruning. Okay, he's still a little young, but the thicker stems in here are a bright yellow. It's good for a natural dye if you're looking for a tan or orange dye of something. So people have used this to dye clothing in the past, to dye ropes, all sorts of stuff. So another really useful native plant here in our park. And if you notice all behind you, it's a very short grass. It's not native grass. A lot of this was brought in over time specifically for grazing animals. And we do mow it, so there is a distinct line where it's shorter and then not shorter. But as you start walking down the stairs here, you will notice a lot of other taller grasses. So those have roots that are at least 1.5+ feet deep. Real good for aerating the soil, letting the water get down into the aquifer. So again, really big point here is protecting the water. We would not be here without it. We are mostly water. We're a bunch of bacteria and water.
I was hoping for stardust.
Cool.
That's fine.
Me too.
That's fine.
We take water.
So we are walking down to the dry creek. And this is why I call it the walk back in time. This whole area right here is built over millions of years. The older the layer, the further to the ground where we're walking is going to be. The further down it is, the more fossils we have found, because this stuff up here is essentially existed when there were more land critters formed. So you really don't find a whole lot here. But you picture, again, ancient seaway where the old Gulf of Mexico was. So water would be rushing in and then receding, then rushing back in and receding. So that's how you have all these different layers.
That explains it.
So these layers have different densities in the sediment. So you notice that's a little red, that's got more soil in it. So that's eventually going to erode away once a heavy rainfall comes rushing down here. We are in Flash Flood Alley. This place got crazy from my understanding in 2015. The water was above our heads. There's all sorts of stuff coming in from the neighborhoods back this way. You can still see some evidence of chunks of cement. Not sure where those all came from. Little scary.
Wow.
So this area stays completely dry until what I've observed, we get about 3 inches of rain in the area. The water will come back this way. So this is part of the dry, we are looking at the dry Cypress Creek. It's about 13 miles long, but the upper half has no water and the lower half has water because that's where the well is located. It's like the halfway marker, which is a little strange to me. I thought it would be up there.
Right.
Like that would be the top, but it's because of the hills and the way that the earth had slipped and moved. And I'll get more talking about that once we get further. Yeah, I have found most of the fossils we got in the nature center out here in the dry creek. A lot of stuff has been picked over the years, but you never know what you're gonna find out here. So if y'all want to take a minute and just peek at some rocks, you might find something. They all do look the same color, dusty color. It's all mostly limestone. Since we were part of an RV park, there is still some evidence of that down here in the form of modern trash. So I found what I thought was an amethyst. It's purple. It was actually old glass. So glass made prior to the 1880s, 1860s had more manganese content. So over time, it turned purple. So if you ever find some hunk of purple that looks like amethyst or rock, it's probably just really old glass, and they don't make it like that anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think I found, never mind. This looked like a giant ammonite at first. I thought it was layered. Okay.
How can you tell? Like, all I see is rock. Like, how can you tell?
So we can take some time and oh, perfect.
See?
This right here. I gotta lift it up so you can see in the shadow, but you can feel it. You can see that there was a clam or oyster